Act 1. The Incident. On December 24, 2008, as families across the country gathered for warmth, laughter, and love, one home in Covina, California, became the site of an unspeakable nightmare. A man in a Santa Claus suit rang the doorbell of a home buzzing with Christmas cheer. An 8-year-old girl, gleaming with excitement, screamed, "Santa!" as she rushed to the door. Seconds later, a gunshot shattered the moment. The same Santa who entered with a smile pulled out a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and shot the little girl in the face. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the air. One by one, the people inside began to fall. That night, 9 members of the Ortega family were gunned down and burned alive in what would become one of the deadliest mass family murders in California's history. Behind the costume was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, a man consumed by rage and revenge, targeting the family of his ex-wife Sylvia Ortega. Act 2. Timeline of Discovery. The night had started like any other holiday gathering. The Ortega family, Joseph and Alicia, their children, grandchildren, and in-laws, had come together for Christmas Eve at their Covina home. Roughly 25 people were present. Food had been shared. Games were being played. Laughter echoed through the house. Then, around 11:30 p.m., a knock. Witnesses reported seeing a man dressed as Santa enter holding a wrapped package. He greeted the family and then suddenly pulled out multiple handguns and opened fire. He moved methodically, shooting people at close range. The gift he carried was a homemade flamethrower. As he executed his plan, Pardo doused the home with racing fuel and ignited it, engulfing the house in a towering inferno. The fire burned so hot it melted parts of his Santa suit into his own skin. First responders arrived to find the house in flames, charred bodies scattered among the wreckage. The scene was described as a war zone. It took 80 firefighters over an hour to extinguish the blaze. Identification of the victims had to be done using dental and medical records. That's how devastating the heat had been. Act 3. The Victims and Their Life. Joseph and Alicia Ortega were the kind of grandparents people admired. Married for 53 years, deeply devoted to their faith and family. They had 5 children: Sylvia, James, Charles, Alicia Jr., and Letitia. All had gathered under one roof that night, along with their spouses, children, and extended family. Among the victims were, like Joseph Ortega, 80, and Alicia Ortega, 70, the family patriarch and matriarch, Sylvia Ortega, 43, Bruce Pardo's ex-wife, and the primary target, James and Charles Ortega, brothers who tried to protect the others and were shot while shielding family. Michael Ortiz, 17, Sylvia's nephew, killed while using his computer upstairs. Alicia Jr. and her daughter Katrina were both present. Katrina survived, but would carry lifelong scars. The 8-year-old girl who answered the door miraculously survived, despite being shot in the face. Only a handful made it out alive. Those who did were forever changed. Leticia, Sylvia's sister, was one of the survivors. She hid under a table and managed to call 911 as bullets whizzed through the house. Her daughter was the child who had greeted Santa, and the one who suffered a gunshot to the face. Leticia would later recall in court how she held her bleeding daughter, screaming into the phone, "My daughter has been shot. She's bleeding. Please come. Please come now."
What is in your house? Ma'am, is the guy in your house right now?
We're having 2 houses down on the Google.
Okay. Ma'am, hold on. Is he at your house?
No, he's
Do you think his name is Bruce?
Bruce Pardo.
Okay, and who is he to you guys? Who is he to you?
He was my ex-brother-in-law. They're going through this right now. He came in through the entrance of the door, and there's a Santa Claus suit on. I didn't see them when he shot. I heard the shots, and they were like popping, and I wasn't sure what it was, so everyone started panicking and running, so we all dove under the gun.
Despite the trauma, Leticia would go on to become a symbol of strength, refusing to let her family's story be reduced to just another holiday headline. Act 4. Crime Scene Breakdown. When first responders arrived at 1129 East Knollcrest Drive, they were met with what can only be described as a war zone. The house was engulfed in a fireball, flames rising nearly 50 feet into the air. fueled by an accelerant and spread by a homemade flamethrower built from a pressurized fuel tank. The blaze was so intense, it took 80 firefighters over 90 minutes to extinguish. Inside, charred remains were scattered among collapsed beams and scorched furniture. Victims were found in various rooms, some clinging to one another, others still crouched under the dining table where they had tried to hide. A 911 dispatcher recorded the frantic voice of Letitia, one of the survivors, as she whispered from under the table, "He's shooting, my daughter's been shot in the face." Her call helped guide police into the burning home, while chaos still unfolded. 8 people were confirmed dead on scene. A ninth, 17-year-old Michael Ortiz, was later found upstairs, likely killed by smoke inhalation or the fire, not bullets. Due to the fire's intensity, many victims had to be identified using dental records and surgical implants. A number of weapons were recovered. 4 handguns, all purchased legally by Pardo, and remnants of the flamethrower device that turned the massacre into a firebomb. Outside the home, neighbors stood in horror as the once peaceful block filled with emergency vehicles, smoke, and the smell of burnt flesh. A blue sedan was seen fleeing the area without headlights, later confirmed to be Bruce Pardo's getaway vehicle. Act 5. Suspicion and Lies. As authorities dug into the case, the full picture of Bruce Pardo began to emerge, and it was as calculated as it was chilling. Pardo had disguised himself in a custom-made Santa suit he had ordered months in advance, telling the costume shop it was for a holiday party. In reality, it was for the execution of a mass murder he had been planning since at least June 2008, 6 months before the attack. His purchases were meticulous: 5 9mm handguns from different stores, a homemade flamethrower constructed using compressed gasoline and industrial piping, multiple high-capacity magazines smuggled in from out of state, a Santa suit laced with explosives that he had wired to detonate if tampered with, over $17,000 in cash wrapped in plastic and strapped to his legs with a girdle, his escape fund. Why? His divorce from Sylvia had turned ugly. Court records revealed that Sylvia had demanded $10,000 in spousal support, citing Bruce's concealed wealth and lies. She had discovered he was hiding a secret child from a previous relationship, a child who was severely disabled and whom he never financially supported. When Sylvia found out, she cut him off, legally and emotionally. The court sided with her. Bruce was fired from his job at Jet Propulsion Laboratory over false billing, and his life began to spiral. He saw Sylvia's family as the reason for his ruin, and on Christmas Eve, dressed as joy incarnate, he became their executioner. Act 6. The Turning Point. Pardo had a getaway plan, or so he thought. After setting the house ablaze, he fled in the rental Dodge Caliber to his brother's home in Sylmar, 40 miles away. But he wasn't ready for what the flames had done to him. The synthetic fibers of the Santa suit had melted onto his body, causing third-degree burns on his arms and hands. He couldn't run, he couldn't fly. His plan had literally burned with him. Hours later, when his brother returned home from a holiday party, he found Bruce dead on the couch, a gunshot wound to the mouth, 2 handguns at his side. The Santa suit, partially fused to his flesh, lay in tatters beside him. But the horror wasn't over yet. The Dodge was rigged with a booby trap. Law enforcement found an explosive device set to detonate if the vehicle was moved. At his Montrose home, investigators discovered what could only be described as a makeshift bomb factory: empty boxes of semi-automatic rifles, high-octane fuel containers, and parts to more explosive devices. He was planning a massacre, not just an act of vengeance. Pardo hadn't just snapped, he had rehearsed his breakdown. Act 7. Psychology and Motive. Bruce Pardo was the textbook image of festivity, charming, church-going, and always the man with a smile. But beneath that smile was a festering storm. In the months leading up to the massacre, Bruce's life had unraveled in quiet chaos. He lost his high-paying engineering job at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for billing fraud. His wife Sylvia had filed for divorce after discovering Bruce was hiding a disabled son from a previous relationship, a child he refused to support. The court ordered Bruce to pay $10,000 in spousal support and give up the house. He refused. Instead, he became obsessed with revenge. According to a psychological profile later completed by FBI profilers, Bruce displayed signs of malignant narcissism. He believed the world had wronged him, that Sylvia and her family had destroyed his life. Instead of accountability, he chose annihilation. His obsession with control and perception drove every detail of his plan. The Santa suit wasn't just a disguise, it was a symbol of warped irony. A man who'd once played Santa at church parties now turned that very image into a mask of mass murder. Psychologists speculated that Bruce saw the holiday and the joy it symbolized as something his ex-wife didn't deserve to have without him. So he took it from her, permanently. His final act, suicide, wasn't just escape, it was ownership. In his mind, Bruce had regained control, and still, he wore his wedding ring. Act 8, Aftermath and Emotional Echo. In the months and years after the massacre, the city of Covina never celebrated Christmas the same way. Families decorated trees with a quiet ache. Candlelight vigils were held outside what remained of the Ortega home, now just ashes and echoes. Letitia Polsky, who survived the massacre and watched her daughter take a bullet to the face, became a voice of both resilience and grace. Her daughter Katrina, just 8 years old at the time, grew up with the scars, physical and emotional, of a night that should have been full of joy. Yet she chose activism over bitterness. Years later, Katrina stood in front of her high school classmates during a school walkout after the Parkland shooting. She read the names of the victims, her voice unwavering, her pain transformed into purpose. "I know what gun violence feels like," she said. "It tried to silence me once. It never will again." Letitia refused to let Bruce Pardo's evil define her family. She took in surviving children. She rebuilt memories, one tradition at a time. Every Christmas Eve, they now gather at the cemetery instead of the house. They light candles. They tell stories. They remember the ones they lost, not for how they died, but for how they lived. Joseph and Alicia Ortega, their children and grandchildren, gone in an instant, left behind a legacy of warmth, family, and unity that even fire couldn't erase. And Bruce Pardo, he left behind nothing but ashes and silence. No legacy, no remembrance, only the kind of evil that gets spoken of in hushed voices. And the haunting truth that sometimes the greatest dangers wear the friendliest masks. This wasn't just a Christmas massacre, it was a message that monsters don't hide under beds. They walk through your front door, smiling. What do you think drives a man to torch an entire family on the holiest night of the year? Let us know in the comments below. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, evil rarely announces itself.